guys, Willie and Murfitt here, and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be fitting the ancillaries to the engine and hopefully getting that one step closer to getting this engine fired up. So if you followed this journey already, thank you so much. The channel is going from strength to strength and it's all down to you guys. If you are new to the channel, please consider clicking that subscribe button down below, as it's going to really help me get that motivation to push on and get this build done and future builds in the future. Anyway, so in the previous episode the engine was plonked in, it was bolted onto the subframe mount, and then I called it a day because I was knackered. So in today's episode we're going to be fitting up the starter motor, the distributor, the alternator, the manifolds, engine steadies, master cylinders. So we do it in the style like Keith Miller, or now his channel is known as Classic Mini Workshop. I'm going to do it on a bit of a time lapse and narrate the episode. So I've got so much to do and so little time to do it. There's a few things I've ordered up recently which are turning up in theory this week. So I do need to get cracking on because I've just made the job a little bit harder for myself. Well, a lot harder. So anyway, let's get cracking on, and thank you for joining me, and I will see you guys later. Okay, so the first job I need to do is to fit the exhaust manifold. Without any of the engine steadies or anything on the front of the car, it's so much easier to just manoeuvre that into place. With that manoeuvred in, I can then just slot it onto the studs, and that is then ready to be bolted down once the inlet manifold is installed as well. So I've gone for a 3-to-1, and that's nice and easy to fit underneath as well. Next job is to fit the fuel pipe onto the fuel pump. So there's a pipe that comes from the back of the car, from the fuel tank, across to the front, and then comes up into the engine bay. So I've put a braided hose onto there from the pipe to the fuel pump, and I've also got a braided hose from the pump to the carburetor. I'm just going to do the bolts up just quickly. And I had a slight hiccup with the, I got 2 clamps that fitted and 2 clamps that didn't fit, so that's a bit of a pain, but these things happen. So there's a lot of chopping and changing in this episode. First of all, I've been working on the engine side of things, and now I'm going to be working on the brake and clutch. So I've got to remove the brake master cylinder that's just placed in there for now, fit the new bracket, and then bolt down the brake and clutch master cylinder. The clevis pins can be added at a later date. I'm just sort of putting them off for now because they're a bit of a pain to get to. So we're then bolted down. That's that section of that job done. And it's moving now on to fitting the hoses, or the pipes. So I'll start with the brakes first. Now the brakes go from, they have a bit of a split to the system. So there's 2 pipes going from the master cylinder into a union, and then they go one to the front of the car and one to the back. Just tighten them down. Once that's done, that's pretty much ready for fitting the calipers on, and then the brakes can be drained out. Okay, so now the exhaust is in place. I've just placed the inlet manifold on, and I can now bolt down that engine steady to stop the engine rocking back and forth. So there's one at the top and there's also one at the bottom. Typically they're at the front of the car, but I've got one on the back, so I've got to just drill a hole into the rear subframe, which again will be done in a later video. Where have I gone? I've gone somewhere. It's quite hard to narrate this. I don't know how Keith does it. So I've got the starter motor now. That's held on with 2 bolts, one on the top and one on the bottom. Once they're bolted in, I just need to run the electrical cable to there for the battery, and then an excite wire, and then some wires to the alternator and to the fuse box. But that's a pretty straightforward process. I'm just going to take time to look and see which wires are which and which needs to go where. Right, so next up is the introduction of the distributor and the coil. So the distributor itself is a Power Spark electronic distributor. That's a complete kit with the distributor, HT leads and coil. I have had this on the car previously, so I'm just going to give it a quick wipe down to make sure it's nice and clean when it goes in, and don't want to get stand out too much from that clean engine. Okay, so typically this
would mount onto there. But I'm going to try and do away with this bracket and mount it onto the 2 holes here. So let's see how we get on with that. Just trying to tidy up the engine bay a little bit.
Okay, so now is the last of the electrical components to go into the engine bay, which is the alternator. There's 2 bolts on the top which are pivoting, and then an adjuster bolt at the bottom. They're in there loose for now because I'm yet to order up my fan belt, because I did order one and I've completely lost it, so I have no idea where it's gone.
Okay, so I was going to call it a night and go indoors. I've done quite a bit tonight. I've sort of fit most of the ancillaries for the engine. But I thought there's one last job I'd like to do, and now the parts are here, why not? So this here is the original radiator had installed. It's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit worse for wear. The bores are full of corrosion. In the top there's completely full of corrosion as well. I don't know if you can see in the top, it's just, yeah, it's seen better days. There's also signs across the bottom that it has been leaking. Tend to get like a bit of a blue chalky, or like a pinky blue chalk. So yeah, it was time to give this car a bit of an upgrade. So plenty of different options of what I can go for. Standard, aftermarket, uprated, race ones. Now this is a standard 998 with a stage 1 tuning kit, so to be honest you don't really need to go excessive. I looked at the Fletcher aluminium radiators. The cheapest I found was £86 online with delivery, but then I was told there's quite a few copies of them around, so that sort of put me off a little bit. If I was going to pay that sort of money for a radiator, I want it to be legit, genuine, etc. So I didn't want to get had. What I did find though was this. This is an ASI aluminium radiator that I found on eBay for £44.50, and it's all TIG welded, it's pressure tested, and it also comes with a 3-year warranty, which is baffling how they can make this sort of product for that. So I've bolted on my cowling, which is all now nicely painted. I've got my bottom hose on, so let's get it installed to the car.
So one of the joys of owning a Clubman is there's so much more room under the engine bay to make sure you've got, well, you're not sort of forcing anything in. A few times doing the round nose minis, they've been a bit of a pain to try and get the radiators in place, but this one went in very, very easily. So I'm just going to attach up now the clutch hose coming from the clutch slave cylinder. It's a new flexible hose and it's a Verto clutch, so it's got a banjo one end. It just bolts up to the bulkhead, which I repaired that bracket previously, and then the pipe goes into the new master cylinder. It's looking pretty good. So let's get the fuse box added back in, and then hopefully that's another job ticked off the list. Okay, so you see here, I took a couple of pictures of the fuse box, so let's show you where the wires go.
On a positive, I have had a couple of deliveries. So this is the rocker cover gasket, or the rocker cover I took off. And I was going to get it powder coated, but I thought, why not just upgrade it to something else? I'm not a huge fan of this one, but this is just to put it on for coverage. So I've got a Metro Turbo, or a Metro style one. The only issue was, much like this one, it had a flat surface at the bottom. So what he has done for me is weld in some little tabs. So when I put my gasket on, so I've got one on this side, one here, and then one down the bottom. So the same as the standard. So as I put my gasket on, it will hold in place and not bend in the middle. So when I'm trying to fit it to the car, I shouldn't have any movement. I shouldn't have it flopping in the middle like so, which happens quite a lot, and you end up with leaky gaskets. One thing you do find is you can fit it to the front, no problem at all, and the back sometimes sits like that. So we slightly modified the rocker cover, so this can now go on. This is going to be going off and getting shot blasted and powder coated in a coming video, so stay tuned for that. But he also brought me a delivery. I can sort this, so I've got a brand new positive and negative battery terminals, or battery cables with terminals, so I can run that from the back of the car all the way down to the front and plug it in. The reason I've got this is because when this car was running originally, it had a wing mounted starter solenoid and also a starter solenoid on the starter motor, so it had two starters for some reason. My understanding would be that it was a side mounted or a separate starter solenoid to start with, and then they've changed the engine at some point to house that, or the starter motor failed, or the starter solenoid on the starter motor failed, and they have that lying around, so they cut the cable and then welded it in from there. Right, and there we have it. The engine is installed, the ancillaries are all put on as well. I'm waiting for a few parts, but we're pretty much done. So in order to get this car running, I've got to do a slight amendment to the wiring, which is going to come up in a future video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, as always, please click the thumbs up button, comment down below, and if you can, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. That's it from me today, and I'll see you next time.